So look, we're really excited to have you all join us today. We've got three amazing speakers sharing their knowledge on being future fit in the world of AI. To my right here, we've got Phil, who's freshly just jumped off a plane. So I'm very impressed that he's here to join us. But Phil is an AI business process specialist at Microsoft New Zealand, and prior to that he's worked at a number of big tech companies. We've got Jamie, who is one of our partners, and Jamie is the Chief Science Officer at Telligent, and he has a passion for new developments in AI and awareness of how AI is impacting the talent acquisition industry. Jamie's really excited to share his insights on the future of recruitment. Jamie and I used to work together in a previous lifetime, didn't we?
We did.
So we've come full circle, which is really cool. And with over a decade of experience across talent assessments, data analytics, insight reporting, and employment consulting and human resources, Jamie has developed outstanding expertise in assessment, development, analysis, and delivery stakeholder engagement and client collaboration. And our last speaker, who we're really excited to have join us today, is Andrew. Andrew heads the AIA Contact Centre and has over 10 years experience in financial services, holding various leadership roles across operations and contact centres. As the head of contact centre at AIA New Zealand, Andrew specialises in transforming teams, delivering performance uplift and leveraging technology to enhance customer experience. And I know in recent years you've led the implementation of the AI tools within your centre. So thank you to the three of you for coming. We're really grateful that you've given up your time and also your expertise as well. So to get into our event, I've got Phil, potentially, why don't we start with you? Sorry, as I shuffle my papers.
So I don't fall asleep. Yes.
So you don't fall asleep, yes. So I'm not serenading you to sleep. But hey, look, from your recent conversations, and I know you do quite a bit in contact centres in Microsoft and in New Zealand, what AI tools or solutions do you think are gaining the most traction, and why do you think that is?
Yes. Well, I've learned today some amazing stuff going on from SmartPay and what they're doing with Zoom. What I've seen mostly in New Zealand is people starting with transcription and summarization. Tends to be pretty easy to turn on. I think the value is relatively limited because that's often done off-platform or out of context of a number of core processes within a contact center related to ITSM systems, CRM systems, or post-call work, wrap codes, and all of that sort of stuff. So most common, transcription, summarization, easy to do, relatively cheap, but very limited in value. The other area I've seen is people cheat. They use ChatGPT. So, or Copilot or Gemini or whatever, you pick a flavor. So they're in there, and rather than swivel chairing between different systems and screens, I don't know, even if there's a screen pop from Genesys into Salesforce or Dynamics, whatever, they cheat. They still have OneNote, sticky notes all over the place, and now ChatGPT seems to be the interface that they go and saying, based on this, because it just gives them contextual information. So transcription, summarization is most common, and then cheating is the next common.
Andrew, this actually might be timely to share your journey, and if you had any comments to add into what Phil's saying of where you started and where you've landed.
Yeah, I think just to Phil's point, it definitely is the easiest to implement. So both case summarization and transcription we've been using for quite some time. And while they're easy to roll out, it's very hard to get the teams to first adopt the change, actually use the tools. But then also from a business standpoint is how you're going to realize the benefits of the investment you've made into these tools. I think from what I've seen across other contact centers, just with speaking with leaders, a lot of people are focusing on things like Agent Assist or Copilot. While that's cool in theory, people are trying to solve for a problem, implement something that's going to, you have your agents answer a call. You don't have to train them. All they do is type in a question. I think that's just too hard and too broad to deliver something like that. The value where I probably see is that you're looking for single case or single issues that you can solve for. So say for instance, right, one of the challenges we were trying to tackle is how do we replace quality assurance? That's probably far too broad. One of the things that we looked at is that actually, well, why don't we just break it down into, okay, what does someone doing QA do? Can we get an agent that just looks at that first part, say, can we verify that that Jamie is doing the correct ID checks on the start of the call? Cool, okay, well, if I can tackle that, then leaves the QA analyst to do all the more complex stuff. So yeah, I think most people are trying to get that agent assist from what I've seen. While there's a lot of tools, that's probably the one that most people are gunning for.
Yeah. And to change direction a little bit, and Jamie, do you have any thoughts or insights for leaders with them bringing in technology, what that might mean from a skill set perspective, or some key things to keep top of mind to get people on that journey?
Absolutely. So, morning everybody. I'm going to come at this from the acquisition side of things, the assessment side of things probably a little bit. So we're seeing sort of two elements at play here. One is obviously the huge amount of digital literacy and AI fluency that's going to be required for the leaders. So these kinds of stories are perfect, right? So you've got practitioners in the front line, the reps, the contact center reps, going rogue, loading up ChatGPT and Copilot and so forth. And the technology is changing so fast and things are happening so fast that leaders are at risk of being left behind and not knowing what's going on. The other ones who are going to be responsible for the guardrails that are going to be needed, going to be responsible for checking for bias, going to be responsible for what's the privacy situation here. All of these aspects that are really, really important and are going to come back to bite you in the butt one day if you're not careful. So first of all, leaders need to be really staying abreast of the changes and keeping up with the play and keeping in touch with their staff to see what's going on. The second side of it, which is really interesting, I think, is the requirement is going to increase for the development of the human skills with sales reps, for contact center reps. So there's going to be a larger and larger piece for leaders to be across whatever development is required, whatever training is required to keep people up with the raising bar that is going to happen with the people on the front lines. I think those are the biggest aspects. A couple other things that sort of come through for us occasionally from the talent acquisition side of things. Leaders are asking us, how do we play with, what's the aspect with bias in the tools here? Or how do we go with neurodiverse candidates? And, we support people with that, and I can give you a speech on that if you're curious about it. But those seem to be the biggest things now. The AI, data, digital literacy, and the support of the human element seem to be really interesting at the moment.
Yeah, which makes sense, and I think that's certainly something that we, as we're out and about in the market, are hearing what does future fit might need to look like from a skill set perspective, but actually underpinning that, one of the key things that we need to be looking for as well. Back to you, Phil. We're hearing more and more about AI agents becoming that first point of contact. Are you seeing this trend in New Zealand and globally? And what do you think the implications could be for customer experience when, as Kiwis, we love to talk to another person?
I don't see it as much locally in New Zealand, but I think a lot of it has to do with, I believe customers are being relatively quiet about what they do. You'll get the occasional executive mention big partnerships with a Frontier AI Lab or one of us or another big tech firm. But I don't see much use of agents externally and customer facing because there's a lot of concern still in the market. And let's be honest, I think the American government just learned how to spell AI, and many other governments are very similar. So, and regulators. What you will see on March 17th is a fully autonomous contact center launched by one of our big four banks. Now, technically fully autonomous, but we're going to go semi-autonomous because we actually don't want to remove people from the equation. What we want to do is make those people managers, not customer service agents. So they're going to have agents which you will speak to, and we need to figure out, make sure the regulator's happy, that you know you're speaking to AI, you're comfortable with AI, even make the voice sound robotic by intention, so you don't get confused. What this will do, whether it's voice channel or digital channel, is in the back room of the contact center, they'll be watching all of this. So they'll be managing all of these agents. They'll be the QA on these agents and able, when things get handed off, because you can only do so much in a bank. There's a lot of legacy, let's be honest. So there will be some human handoff. When you get to a human, there'll be a nice, clear experience difference with that, and a quick resolution. So we'll have those humans in the back end be more managers and learning that skill set on what to look for and how to preside over these pieces of technology that operate just like humans do in the workplace. And I'm hoping in 2026, one, assuming we can publicly talk about who this bank is, there'll be more. Overseas, this is almost default. BlackRock, right? 1-800-Flowers. You'd be amazed at how many agents they have running around dealing with people like me who forgot it was Valentine's Day. So overseas, these are common patterns, and this is good because they're guinea pigs, right? We're able to copy and paste. Regardless, I know I represent a big tech. All big tech has generally the same sort of strategy, slightly different approaches to it. But we can allow the overseas folks, where I just came from in Seattle, to learn, and we can copy and paste and right size it for New Zealand. So in summary, I think in 2026, you'll see more companies being comfortable talking about, here's an agent. After a decade of failed chatbots. They're just horrible. They've always been horrible. But now they don't have to be, and we have the right learnings, policies in place where people can be comfortable to talk about it. It's out there, we just don't always talk about it.
Yeah. Andrew, this might be quite a nice segue to you and your journey. Are you able to share a bit about, you touched on the why, but the journey that you're on at the moment with AIA, and I know you've achieved some really great awards as well.
So we're, just a bit of context, so for our context, it's relatively small, so about 50 agents across, the phones, live chat. So, we're not small enough that we can't use these tools, but we're not big enough where we're restricted by budgets and all that kind of thing, right? So we've been able to play around with a lot of stuff. I think to Phil's point, we actually did a proof of concept earlier this year where we used agentic AI with our advisors. So this one was customer facing, where with actual clients, they want to know, based on our policy wordings, if I've got this health condition, what am I covered for if it came to claim, right? So it actually was, for that specific use case, it was good. But when you're going out to meet with a client, or say if you're the end customer, you're not only going to just ask those specific questions or about that one product. There's a lot of variables. And so unless you want to deliver something that's customer facing for just one specific example, it's actually not that useful. So that's the one thing that we took away from that, is that while it's useful in the back office to answer those types of questions for our customer facing staff, it's not good enough yet to give out to customers. So little things like that we're trialing. We do have live chat, and at the moment we take 300 to 400 chats per day. One of the things that we are trying to do is to introduce a Genetec AI that's going to pick up fairly easy, low effort queries. We've found some success in the stuff that we've piloted so far. But the idea behind that is that when you come through to an agent, you don't want to have, say, 10 people sitting there idle, waiting for chats. So anything that is relatively easy to do, we're okay with AI picking that stuff up. So the stuff that does come through to our agents is actually more complex in nature and stuff that's actually going to be, a bit more challenging for them to keep them engaged, but also we don't want to be wasting time just with the easy stuff, right? So that's one of the things we're working on. As I said before, we rolled out case summarization and also case wrap-up through Salesforce. That stuff's been amazing. Just to give an example, after call work times on average was around 3.5 minutes, because a lot of people love to write essays after a call, right? Now that's averaging just under 30 seconds. That one actually took, as I mentioned before, that was the hardest part, was everyone knew the tools were amazing, but actually getting people to use them and trust the tools. Even after we rolled it out, that 3.5 minutes stayed 3.5 minutes for a few months, right? So we did have to change our KPIs internally to get people to actually use them. So 30 seconds, case wrap up, that's a thing of the past where people were spending ungodly amounts of time writing notes. Had the transcription, all that stuff. We're using sentiment analysis quite a bit. And one of the things through Genesis, our telephony platform, next year, we're in discussions with them about using based on the sentiment analysis, introducing some of the QA stuff. There's a lot of things that are going on at the moment. We're trying everything. We're also, even though I'm not that keen on it, the Agent Assist Copilot stuff, a lot of big work going on, not just AIA New Zealand, but across group. But we're fortunate that we're the smallest country in AIA group, that we're getting a lot of support from our head office and a lot of push to get the stuff put in place so that we can test it out.
So similar to probably what you were saying, Phil, right? Let the bigger countries trial it, test it.
They've got the money to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is that on the flip side is that Thailand, they're much larger. What we do in a month, they do in a day, right? Thousands of calls. They actually rolled out a voice agent to do all the outbound arrears calls, right? So I think what you mentioned, they made it clear that it was a AI. When they first rolled it out, it was so good that they were a bit concerned that, okay, well, do people actually know this is a bot they're talking to? So they sort of dumbed it down a bit, but based on that, I think in the first month they attempted 170,000 calls. They only made contact with 50% of those customers, but from that 50%, they collected 70% payments without human interaction. And so that sort of funded itself. Now, we're not that comfortable in New Zealand to do that kind of thing yet, but that's just, we're trialing the smaller things, and our bigger countries are playing around with the bigger use cases like that.
Yeah, so there are some benefits to being in New Zealand.
Yeah, definitely.
When you get access to what is happening outside of APAC. Jamie, we're hearing a lot about AI and changing how we're working. And a key example, call wrap-up time being reduced down. From an assessment perspective and from a leader perspective, what are some key things that you're seeing or that leaders need to be aware of when they are going to recruit?
Yeah, so some of Andrew's stuff is beautifully going to tie in here. We're seeing a few interesting things on where things are going to change for the agents and hiring the agents. So an analogy I'm really proud of that I came up a couple of months ago, it's a slightly different context, but I think it applies and I've been able to use it a few times, is this totally ties in with the story that Andrew just told. So imagine a doctor in a very busy regional office. They're the only doctor in that region. They're flat out all the time. They're doing all the work. Then they get a nurse and the nurse comes in, and now the nurse is taking care of the vaccinations and changing dressings and all that stuff. So does the doctor get to go home early? No, they get to spend more time on the more complex stuff, right? And then you imagine they get a junior doctor in, and now the junior doctor's taking care of the ear infections and the respiratory stuff and the broken arms and so forth. Does the senior doctor get to go home early? No, the senior doctor has more time, proportionally more time for the complex stuff. And so this is what I mentioned earlier when I said that the bar might be raising here. So where you've got staff where the low-level stuff's being taken care of, the repetitive stuff's being taken care of, the post-call novellas and short stories are being taken care of, it's going to proportionally, those people are still going to spend 8 hours sitting there. They're going to spend more time on the more complex stuff. So what does that mean? That the bar is going to raise for those candidates, which is, I think, the irony here, that you think life's going to get easier with AI. Relatively, you could argue that it's in some ways the opposite, but it's a positive, I think, because it's more fun. You get to spend more time on the interesting stuff. It just means that you might start having a higher bar for the new people that you're hiring. So that's what we're seeing from our side. So, a couple of examples. We've got, some of you know the phrase BPO, it's the Asian outsource phrase that they use, business process outsourcing. So we've got a couple of huge BPOs in Asia that are using our tools, and one of them, Accenture, did a big refresh recently, and so they're assessing their candidates now on learning agility. They've put in their resilience. They've put in their communication is still a huge piece. They've added our English language product, which we launched last year. What else was in there? Curiosity, and they've added a cognitive one as well. So they're expecting a higher bar of cognitive ability as well. You get these kinds of stuff from someone like me. I start talking about things like this. So I would summarize it in a couple ways. You've got the AI fluency, the digital comfort, and there's a few things that come into that. Is that me making that noise? Am I doing something wrong?
Maybe lift your hand up.
There's so I'll come back to that AI fluency and comfort side, and then you've got the increased requirement for human skills. So because that bar has risen, you need better communication probably. You're going to need more sort of curiosity. You're going to need more interaction skills and the judgment and all that comes along with it. So I think that's really interesting. And so then the other side, the AI and digital fluency, is, Andrew's told us a story about they tried to launch some products and there was trouble getting them on board to even use the thing. Like, that's horrible. You want you want your staff to be ready for change. So there's a change element from the leadership perspective there, but hiring staff that are adaptable is going to be a big one. That's what we're having a few conversations with some of our clients about. The adaptability, the flexibility, the resilience, we're seeing more of that coming along because things are changing very, very quickly. So I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a positive. It's just, the rocky road for some organizations out there potentially to achieve that. And then the last one, I think I mentioned a second ago, the English language proficiency. So sales is not one of my KPIs. I'm not doing this for that reason. We launched this thing a couple of years ago for the Asia market, and then surprisingly, we've had a bit of an uptick across Australia and New Zealand for some contact centers starting to use the English proficiency. So the bar may be raising in some aspects there.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, more migrant candidates. I don't know, but they're awesome, and the bar might be just raising in some aspects. So I think it's really interesting stuff. Yeah.
And it makes sense. I often, and I was having this conversation with some friends at the weekend, we learnt to communicate because we had a one home phone. And so we had to pick it up and say, hi, Mrs. Whatever, can I please talk to? And those basic skills are now being taught in the workplace, right? Because technology is changing, cell phones, whatever, and you're not having to go through a number of gatekeepers. And my husband always says, I remember with my first girlfriend, I had to talk to the father before I got to talk to her. But you're learning simple skills, which is changing. So look, that's enough from me. We really want to be able to open this up to the floor, to questions. So does anybody have any questions for our wonderful panel? Oh, well, I've got a lot of hands. Okay, Saeed, I'll start with you first.
Hi, I'm Saeed from Curious. A question for you. What would be an ideal structure for implementation of AI? I know it's a broad question, but Andrew said we've gone through the summarization, ACW had done, we've gone through the process, and we are seeing results. ACW reduced top number. According to you, what would be an ideal way of implementing so that we can get better results?
Oh, why did you have to ask that question? The right answer is it depends. I think where I see success is where there's a North Star, right? And to describe that North Star as much as possible, and then working back in a typical McKinsey style 3 horizons view or whatever you want to call it towards that North Star. Making sure every aspect of the tech you choose, the process change you make, and the people you have are aligned to that North Star. Now that's a bit of teaching you to suck eggs, right? Because we've been doing that for 30 years. But it's really important now. And one of the conversations Jamie and I had earlier about some of this stuff is, tech is easy, and it's actually pretty cheap. You now have free access to a PhD. It's in your pocket, right? It doesn't matter if it's Microsoft or OpenAI or Google, it's in your pocket, right? The tech stuff is actually pretty easy. The architecture stuff isn't that hard either. You're gonna have to make some bets of, do I keep something or do I swap something out? Because the contact center world is merging, right? Genesys raised $750 million of capital from Salesforce and then another from ServiceNow. Why? Because you're coming to a full stack, right? That's what we like to think we're pushing them into that space. Private equity has gone into to buy workforce management, workforce engagement. So as a finance dude, I'm looking, okay, the world's changing. Look at where capitals are flowing. You're going to see a contraction. So you're gonna have to make some tech decisions, which will influence your architecture. But none of that matters if it's disconnected to this North Star. Like, what do we want to be? Do we want to be a contact center of one person, or keep our contact center at 1,000 people or 50 people? Do we want our contact center to be a revenue operation? Like, why not? Why does it always have to be a cost center? That's the big change we're going through internally. The other thing is we have, in contact centers, I often see this revolving door. People see it as a step in and they want to progress. Well, how can we maximize that? So I don't know if I have the best answer to your question, but I think that North Star within a reasonable period of time, 2 years, I think if you do 5 years, you're dead in the water. If you do a month, you're not thinking big enough. But to have something, this is what we're going to do, chunk it down logically and get on and deliver it, and making sure, just like Andrew was saying, we get benefits very quickly. And you can from tech. If you're buying the right tech from the right vendors and engaging the right partners with the right incentives, you're gonna get value immediately. And then it's going to be a constant change of how do we get people to adopt it? And more importantly, what I reference is change your incentives, right? I walk into too many places, sometimes Microsoft, where we got all the tech in the world, stuff you haven't even seen yet, but we still create Excel or send an email. Find those people, remove them from the organization. But honestly, think of all of that, North Star, but it's gotta be, look for the change agents and drive that stuff. None of this stuff has to be as hard as we make it. And it's also not as easy as people like me that sell it, right? That's the truth. We're all trying to sell something. You may not want to buy something, but that North Star sets you further. Challenge your sacred cows, whether it's people, process, or tech, and put that North Star on the wall, right? And that's where we're going. And it's only 2 years, right? By the time you take out a couple of summer holidays, that's about 6 working weeks here in New Zealand. It's a joke. I'm delirious, I just got back from Seattle. But honestly, that's what I would do. I don't think it's anything we haven't already attempted or done in other parts of our business. You just got to go faster.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You go, John.
Hi, my name's John. I'm from Navico Group. A question really about regionalisation. So, in the Asia Pacific region, obviously, it's not quite as perhaps homogenous as North America. We've got people from Pacifica, we've got Pākehā, European ancestry, all the way across to Asia. There's huge differences between Eastern and Southeastern Asia and Western Asia and so on. So the question is, like even the difference between New Zealand and Australia, very culturally, some people look at it and say it's different, but when you're working on the coalface, there's a lot of differences. People say it's the same, but when you're at the coalface, there's a lot of differences between the two countries. The question is, when you're ingesting the data from the consumer, the end customer, you're going to have a lot of accents, you're going to have a lot of cultural ways that people approach problems when they're coming to you, but also reflecting them back in order to deliver an answer back to the customer in a way that they see appropriate. It's easy enough to tick English New Zealand when you're setting up an instance or something like that, but really it needs to be much, much wider. I know our parent company in North America will tick, English US, and then we're stuck with US accents for the rest of the
Lots of Zs.
Yeah, lots of Zs. So, is there any way that you can kind of grow that regionalisation and get out of the uncanny valley so that you get people stuff that's culturally and language style to their style of work?
I'll start. We've solved for that. I mean, that's not an issue. For us in the tech that we have, we can allow customers create their own voices in a voice agent, and that covers all of that. There's, to what Andrew was saying, the big tech vendors all have little buttons in there to translate. You can do any languages, Tereo, Japanese, your big ones. Generally not too much of an issue with the big platforms. I can't speak for all of them, I don't know all of them, but I imagine if you're working with Microsoft, Salesforce, AWS, that's solved for 100%. You don't believe me, but it's there. You can download it and try it for yourself. So the intonations, the good day versus kia ora, the how you going versus, that's all solved for. It really is, whether it's translated for a non-English speaker in the back end to account for G'day, or is it a voice bot or a digital bot speaking as a various different region? Yes. Where we have challenges, India. Because there's, 200 different dialects in India, but we are solving for that. Generally, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Don't believe me, test it out. I don't know if you have other views.
There's definitely tools out there that can neutralize accents and language as well, to Phil's point. We use some of that, not at a voice level, but a lot of our emails, obviously, we use Copilot or ChatGPT just to remove a lot of the language that's used. But we still are challenged internally with a lot of the cultural changes. So a lot of our back office operations sits in Malaysia. And so while the emails and that might look New Zealand or Kiwi, a lot of the understanding behind the scenes that's a problem that we haven't been able to solve for just yet. So I don't know if that answers your question, to be honest, but I think to your point, there are tools out there that can help with the accents and the use of language and contact sensors.
We used to struggle with Irish accent. Understanding that because generally it's Americans or English kind of built these softwares, or now Chinese. That's all gone away. So advanced voice mode in OpenAI and Anthropic have their version. There are ways to account for things. Where we still get it wrong, and I say the royal way, is the writing of indigenous language. Te reo is a challenge, but for us, because we have a whole dictionary and others can create a dictionary, it's a bit better on transcription. But you can have an Asian that sounds New Yorker, hey, forget about it, huh? Take it easy. Or Texan, or Irish, or Belfast, which is obviously a very different accent, or Northern Spain, Southern Spain. Honestly, it's not a challenge anymore. It is not. The AI is so far ahead, I wouldn't worry about that sort of stuff.
I think we have one more. Oh, we've got 2 more questions. I'll come to you and then maybe pass it on to Tanya. Thank you.
Hi, I'm just curious in terms of, you talk about AI and the systems being implemented, and I don't know if anyone else will agree in the room, but I think some of the New Zealand companies have customised some of those systems to the nth degree, and so then when you've got the new systems coming in standardised, they don't fit the customisation, and I think maybe that's part of the challenge in terms of when they're trying to adjust to the new systems. That's one of the resistance. What's your solutions been in that particular space when you're approaching it? Because that's definitely something I've seen implementing different systems that's really, it's so customised, and they're like, well, I want it to do this and this, and it doesn't necessarily do that. So I suppose what's your approach been and solutions around that space?
Since I've got the
That
mic.
sounds like a Phil question.
I'm an arrogant American, so you're not a unique snowflake. I work with mostly banks and a couple telcos in the airline. You buy commodity. Big tech sells commodity. Don't reinvent Outlook or Gmail or Slack or Teams or Contact Center. You buy that stuff, so it's hard. Where I would focus everywhere is knowledge management. Knowledge management is the most crucial and often undersold component of contact centers by salespeople in my vendor landscape, from competitors in my company. Why? Because it doesn't generally drive license revenue. And it's a tough conversation. Where should knowledge live? ServiceNow, SharePoint, Salesforce, Dynamics. You figure that out. That's the only technical debt in customization that one needs to figure out. Good news is, I don't think there's a wrong answer there, but it does influence what you do with it and the tech you choose on top of it. A lot of vendors want to force you down into their world, so knowledge has to sit in their platform with their data clouds and all these sorts of things. Not an issue if you're in that silo. But I wouldn't worry too much about customizations. I'd worry about knowledge management first. Everything else hangs off of it, from enabling a voice strategy, self-service via IVR, website, all the stuff you're doing today. Those systems of record, and I fully believe Satya, when he said this a couple years ago, will start collapsing. The value of software is going to accrue not in Dynamics or Salesforce, it's going to accrue in these systems of engagements, in your IVR, in your bots, internal bots, and that all hangs off of knowledge. So you don't have to get knowledge into one place, but don't have it in a billion places. Dear Lord, don't do that. But make sure it's clean and representative of what you want to do with that knowledge, and then you choose the tools that you want to choose to bring that value back to any channel, be it employee, be it customer, web, chatbot, whatever. So I wouldn't worry too much about system configurations, because sometimes I think all this, like, I don't want to say, but you're going to see vendor consolidation in the contact center market. So you're going to be forced to deal with that at some point in time. Do the knowledge first, because that's immediate value unlock for the business, regardless of whatever tech you choose on that. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Do you want to add anything? Or? Yeah, sorry.
I think as Bill mentioned, not unique. We are in the same situation, AIA, we were sovereign. Before that, a whole bunch of different, so over the years, over 30 years, it's probably been 6 or 7 different insurance companies. At one stage owned by ASB, CBA, and so a lot of legacy systems. We've improved, but still very, very, very customized in a lot of ways. I think to your point, what we did right, not because of AI, was that we centralized all our knowledge and just happened to be in Salesforce. I think the biggest benefits that you'll find if you improve your knowledge management system is that all the AI stuff that you build going forward is only as good as what the knowledge looks like. So, whether you've got a billion pages or one, you have to start cleaning it up. We've got a lot of Word documents, PDFs that I think you just have to get started. Improve on that, and that's how you get the tools. So last year, when we were going through a proof of concept with Salesforce, that doesn't matter if it's $1 trillion company, they couldn't fix the issues that we had. So we had to start from scratch, where we had to take stuff out of Word documents. Some of those documents actually hadn't been updated since 10 years ago. So it's actually a good thing, and I think everyone in this room, if I had any advice to give, is start looking at those documents, start updating those, do it a bit more regularly, because then that helps improve whatever AI you start.
Or use an agent to do it. Once you clean it up, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, that's all we've done.
Once you clean it up, agents will start doing all this stuff for you. It's not pixie dust or magic. It's out there. It's being used and in the wild. But you still have to do the foundational elements. Forms over data. How do we customize? It's in Genesis. That's in ServiceNow. That's in Salesforce. Not a huge issue. You're going to have to deal with it eventually, but it's not where I would start. Unless you want to replace it and buy something. But no, kidding.
Yeah. So, going back to your question, right? Whether you're highly customized or not, you can still get started, and you can have AI solve for some of the issues. You don't want to be held back and not make any attempts just because your systems are old or all over the place. You can still get started and at least tackle one thing.
Kia ora. I'm Antonia. Hey, question for you, Andrew. You shared about how it's really challenging to get people on board with the change, which is something I feel like we've probably all heard from all of the companies. What were some of the main hesitations or areas of resistance from your team? And what were the things you did to get people on board and get that change through?
It's the same thing. AI or not, people are comfortable with what they know, what they've always done, right? So as good as these tools are, I've been doing it this way for years, there's no issue with it. So people are looking at, what's working for them currently, and whether it's frontline staff or even the leadership team. So when the first use case we rolled out, we looked back and said, okay, well, how can we do it a bit different? What we did differently the next time round was that we involved frontline staff and especially all the leaders, whether they were going to contribute to the technical upgrades, it was beside the point. What we wanted them to understand was what is the change, what are the benefits, and what can they do to help realize those benefits. So it's just taking those people along on the journey. I think a lot of value out of having frontline staff being involved, contributing to the role of the project. And that's what was going to drive the change. It didn't matter if Andrew, the guy that's so far removed from the context center, is saying that this is going to be everything it should be. it was coming from their colleagues. So all the people on the frontline staff that were showing others what these tools are doing, how they can improve, they were the ones that were driving those changes. Yes, I made some decisions, in given direction, but ultimately what actually got people to buy into it was the frontline leaders and the people on the front lines themselves. So that was a big takeaway for us, was making sure that it's not just the people in the tech teams that are actually going to implement the changes. The big part of it is change management. So rather than spend the next 6 months trying to, promote it, spend the 6 months beforehand getting people to buy in. They're the ones that are going to push for the change.
And at Microsoft, we made a promise not to make anyone redundant. And we have 35,000 support engineers, and we've gone through redundancy, like many in this room. And hopefully it doesn't happen again, but you never know. So we had an exec come in and say, this isn't taking jobs. I got your back, but I want you to stop doing dumb stuff, because they're smart people, generally speaking, really smart people. I want you to be part of the forward deployed engineer group. I want you to go into research. To do that, I need your skills to stop doing password resets because Windows 10 is now end of life. Come on now. So some of those exec commitments help as well, because your people read the newspaper. AI takes jobs. Some executives in big tech go around bragging about it. One, I don't think it's actually real. I can tell you, Microsoft, we haven't replaced a single person with AI. Those were corporate decisions well above my pay grade, but we don't have people being replaced by AI. We aren't hiring in certain areas because AI is going to do it, that's for sure, but people aren't being replaced by AI. AI is not that good yet. It really isn't.
That kind of links on to what Jamie was saying, which is really interesting, is the Asian BPOs, so the Asian call centers are embracing AI. So in my head, AI is the enemy of Asian call centers. I want to eliminate our Asian call center by using AI. But you're saying embracing it and taking on. What do you see that their role in 5 years, 10 years when AI is embracing it? What will those Asian call centers, what will they have transformed?
Okay, tough old question.
Crystal ball.
Crystal ball. Ask the AI panel about 5 years from now. Goodness. Ask us from 6 months from now.
What are they trying to do?
Yeah. Okay, so I think it touches on a little bit of what I said earlier, that the automation of the menial stuff is taking place. So the competition in the bar is raising. So they have competition. Those BPOs, rather than it's a department of a business like AIA has the contact center department. These are BPO businesses that are billion dollar businesses that their business entirely rests on winning these RFPs and so forth. These massive American, Australian businesses. So they're in huge competition, and so what they need to do is show quality. So I think that's what they're looking at right now, is raising the quality of the people answering those calls. It's really interesting, and it's really cool because they're processing. We see thousands of applicants coming through every week for some of those areas, and that's what they're looking for right now. It's just raising the quality, screening out the people who aren't going to thrive and But hey, ask me something in 5 years, who knows?
Well, I've heard several times the bar is raising, and of course that's a good thing for all of us here who are all employees.
Yes.
What about my son who's just finished high school with the end of the job market in a few years' time, and suddenly there's nobody that's involved by AI?
Yeah, goodness, I don't know. Who's got an answer for that one? Yeah, that's tough. I have children too. I'm scared. I'm terrified.
I think it's overblown as well, right? But it's valid. My daughter's 16, has a couple more years, and then I'm kicking her out of the house like my parents did to me. I know. But what my experience, I've had to unlearn lots of really bad behavior, right? I haven't had to ask very good questions because what's Jane in finance? She'll figure out, or Bob in facility, or something like that. You now have to start to really ask good questions, think through elements, describe in detail what it is you are trying to achieve, that's all you're doing. And like asking ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, that's having that conversation and that skill set to really describe what you want and iterate on that is going to be very paramount. And I force my daughter to use AI. Luckily, in the school, we help put in guardrails, traffic light system. They embrace it, even the people that don't like it, because the genie has never gone back into the bottle, right? And we can't say, study this and don't study that. But I would encourage everyone, understand it, because I've already got these tools. I play with them every day, all the tools, not just the Microsoft ones, because I know I'm coming towards the end of my career. I have to beat the younger person who wants to work harder, cheaper than me. So I'm gonna have to stay on top of my game. I think we're all just going to learn, but nothing to be afraid of. Again, who said it the other day, if we cut all entry-level jobs, there's just no point in having jobs. That you need to start somewhere. But we will cut entry-level jobs where it doesn't make sense. Like doctor, I have a friend, short version. Couple years, you might have nieces, nephews have gone through the system yourself. First couple of years of medical school and going through all this stuff, you walk around with a clipboard, pushing around a thing, filling out prescriptions, and you're not learning how to be a doctor. You're learning the process of doctoring. That's moronic, right? More engagement. So those things will start to change, hopefully.
Sorry, I know Lydia wants to wrap up, but I did think of an answer while you were talking to so I think for our children, it's some of those competencies I mentioned earlier: communication, resilience, adaptability. Like, this is the stuff that's going to get people to hit the ground running, because your training is going to get better, your onboarding is going to get better. So yeah, that's where I think we can help our kids to get good jobs. Yeah, there we go.
I actually have heard of a school in Eastbourne, and the school is really driving the community to put in home phones. And the whole idea, this primary school, is that so they can learn to talk to each other through a home phone. And again, it's those basic skills, right? I mean, Andrew and I had this conversation. My first job at 16 was at AC Nielsen doing outbound surveys. It paid the best. I could do 6 to 10. I could jump in my car at 10 to 10 before I needed to be off the road because I was on my restricted license. And that, I truly believe, has given me some grounding. And so I think, and we're certainly not seeing a reduction in those roles. It just might not quite be in the volume that we're used to.